Hi guys, so I just came back from Georgia and I just want to give you a little synopsis of Georgia, the country. I wanted to give you a little synopsis about what is happening there and why it's a microcosm for really what's happening pretty much everywhere in the world. So first let's check out a brief synopsis about Georgia. Okay, so here we're in beautiful Georgia, the lovely little waterfalls there. And what do we have here? We have a country that it's sold itself out to the Americans, as you can see over here. Look on the left there, US aid. That basically means US bribery, trying to buy the military here. So there's a lot of military things now. They're buying all the American M4 transport carriers, the guns, and that's how America basically instills itself everywhere. Obviously Russia went to war with Georgia in 2008 to stop them doing this, just like they're doing now with Ukraine, and it did stem it a bit, so the EU has refused to let them in, and NATO as well. They are begging to join them because they're very, very poor. $250 a month here is a decent wage. The pension here is $90 a month. So they've no natural resources. 3.5 million people is a population of Georgia. But 3 million Georgians live outside of Georgia, meaning a good half of the Georgians don't live in Georgia because there's no opportunities, there's no natural resources. It's basically tourism, and that's about it. So this is what the Americans do. They try to buy them off with cheap bribes and cheap things, and yeah, this is the standard American way of doing things, trying to penetrate here. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so following that background, I found out that all of last week there was massive protests and counter-protests in Tbilisi, which is the capital, regarding a foreign agents bill. That's what they call it, right? And it's really an NGO bill. It's against NGO. The government has proposed to stop these NGOs, because what are these NGOs, non-government organizations? Essentially, they're funded by the US and the EU, and they are meant to destabilize the current government, give more liberal wokeness, woke, and to essentially force them into a more liberal stance so that they join the EU. Now, Georgian president at the moment does not want to join the EU, even though they are set to have been, Ukraine and Georgia were set to start going into the EU in 2028. But the Georgian president is saying, you know, we're an independent nation, we're going to figure this out on our own. And these NGOs are essentially trying to put pressure on him. So he created this bill to stop them from doing that. So then you had the funded masses. It is exactly the same that happened in Ukraine, by the way. Ukraine was always pro-Russia. They worked very well together. And then the funded NGOs caused a coup in 2004. It was just people on the street who were paid to be there, pretending there was a mass uprising. And then there was the election that got Zelensky in. And now you have about 500,000 Ukrainians dead and more dying for the EU and the West for no reason. Absolutely no reason. I don't know why. You know, Russia already had the Minsk agreement with them. It was very clear there was no need for war. But this is what happens when you become a Western puppet state. So Ukraine went Western puppet state because of the NGOs, and Georgia is going the same way. So the president wants to stop that. And a lot of people were pro what the president said on, when was it? On Sunday, I think. On Sunday, there was a big pro-presidential, pro-government support, that they don't want these NGOs interfering with them. And I spoke with one Georgian there, and they told me, listen, we spent 8 years trying to get rid of the Soviet Union and communism. And now you want us to join another communist bloc, the EU? And as a failing one at that as well. Remember, the EU is totally crumbling. It is a puppet state of America regarding defense. The Americans blew up their Nord Stream pipeline, and Germany didn't say a word. and they're being forced to fund a war that they were previously getting all their energy from. It's just an absolute catastrophe. Germany's in recession. Don't go then. It's been an absolute disaster. So the EU itself is a puppet state of America. And the EU itself, regardless of certain things that America doesn't care about, then controls and forces refugees and, all these people on the other countries. So this person said, I want to be an independent country. I don't want to be part of another country. If it was an economic pact, no problem, but it's not. And I believe that person, I completely agree with. And this is what we're having now. And this is what they do in all these countries. The Western expansion of NATO, trying to get Ukraine in, the Western expansion of the EU. EU is meant to be very small. How the heck they got to Poland, Lithuania, Georgia? Georgia's Europe now? It's the other side of the Black Sea. We're in Asia now as part of the EU. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And what, Japan's going to be part of the EU soon? I mean, it's mad what's going on. It's just blocks trying to build up their blocks to counter each other, essentially. Global politics and people going into these blocks and they're being subverted, democracy is subverted by these NGOs and they should be banned, in my opinion. All these people should be banned, all these these funding should be banned, but they are not doing that. And in the West, they are the ones causing the policy. As I've told you before, in Ireland, a big thing there are the NGOs essentially dictate the policy of the Irish government. In the UK as well, it's the same thing. In the UK, it's the same thing. And we see in the US, they literally hand out, we had this with this black, who is this black guy who was handed out to deal with all the immigrants there, contracts by the government. He was pocketing all the money. I mean, that's what they do, right? But at least he just pocketed all the money and actually didn't do anything. So I actually respect that guy. But these guys pocket the money and cause disturbance in the governments. So it's a real problem. It's a real problem. NGOs are a disgrace and they should be closed down by all governments, but they won't, because either those government people go into NGOs afterwards, they become presidents or heads or whatever, get paid a lot of money to stay at home, or they're given speaker tours or whatever by these NGOs afterwards as well. That's how it works. So that's how they influence you, and that's how they subvert democracy, as they did with Ukraine, 500,000 dead, as they're going to do in Georgia, as they did with the entire West, UK 3 million immigrants per year, still not stopping. It's never going to end without us stopping NGOs. They should have no place in our society.